Silas Johnson's college application essay trembled in Dr. Whitmore's manicured fingers as 27 AP English seniors held their breath, the classroom clock marking 38 days until submission deadlines. "This isn't Harvard material, Mr. Johnson. Your people should aim for something more attainable," Dr. Whitmore announced, dropping Silas's essay onto his desk. The paper landed with a soft thud. Silas stared at his work, 3 weeks of late nights, now face down with a red C bleeding through. Tyler Matthews and his crew snickered from the back row. Dr. Franklin Whitmore, Westridge Academy's celebrated English teacher, hadn't earned his nickname Dream Crusher without reason. For 15 years, his recommendation letters were golden tickets to elite universities. His prediction record, 100% accuracy on 157 student outcomes. Silas retrieved his essay, humiliation crawling up his neck as Dr. Whitmore lectured about realistic expectations. His grandmother's words echoed, "They'll try to put you in a box, but you're made for more." The wall clock ticked. 38 days to prove Whitmore wrong, 38 days to secure a recommendation never given to anyone from Silas's side of town. Would Silas become just another statistic in Dr. Whitmore's prediction ledger, or the first to shatter the teacher's perfect record? 3 years ago, Silas Johnson arrived at Westridge Academy when district lines were redrawn. One of 8 East Side kids bused to the affluent school, he carried both hope and the weight of opportunity on his shoulders. Home was a cramped 2-bedroom apartment where Silas shared space with his younger brother Jamal. His father, a hospital custodian still recovering from back surgery, and his mother, a postal worker, worked double shifts to keep the family afloat. Their mantra was simple: education breaks cycles. "Your mind is your strongest muscle," his father would say, tapping Silas's temple with a calloused finger after 12-hour shifts. Silas's most treasured possession came from his grandfather, a worn leather bookmark with Frederick Douglass's words embossed on its surface. "Once you learn to read, you will be forever free." The leather felt smooth against his fingertips, carrying the distinct scent of cedar and aged paper that transported him to childhood Sundays spent learning to read on his grandfather's lap. Literature had been Silas's salvation long before Westridge. At 7, his grandmother, a retired teacher, began taking him to East Side Community Library while his parents worked. By 5th grade, he'd exhausted the young adult section. By 7th, he filled notebooks with his own stories. "That one's special," his grandmother told Mrs. Perez, the librarian. "Reads like he's breathing." When the Westridge opportunity appeared, his grandmother insisted he apply. "They need to see what East Side talent looks like." The contrast was stark, a gleaming building with resources Thompson Middle School could only dream of. Freshman year, English teacher Ms. Rivera immediately recognized Silas's gift when he submitted a college-level analysis of Toni Morrison. She became his champion, even driving him home after literary magazine meetings. Sophomore year brought confidence. His essays earned top marks. He published stories under the pen name East Wind. He made acquaintances, if not close friends. Then came junior year and Dr. Franklin Whitmore's AP English Literature class. From day one, Whitmore made his perspective clear. Literature is about understanding the finest traditions of Western civilization. Some of you may find the material challenging. His eyes lingered on Silas. Where previous teachers praised Silas's unique perspectives, Whitmore marked them overreaching or missing the point. By December, Silas's confidence was crumbling. Now, senior year had begun. Whitmore's classroom featured a university board displaying former students' college acceptances with the Ivy League cluster at the top. Each name carried the acknowledgement, "With recommendation from Dr. F. Whitmore." Not a single East Side student had ever appeared in that top section. As class ended, Silas slipped his grandfather's bookmark into the Invisible Man, running his thumb across the embossed words for strength. Tyler Matthews, son of a board member, heir to a Harvard legacy spanning 3 generations, knocked Silas's books to the floor. "Harvard," he snorted. "Dream on, Johnson." As Silas gathered his scattered belongings, Dr. Whitmore stepped over the fallen books without a glance. Silas watched them leave, humiliation crystallizing into determination. 38 days. The countdown had begun. The following Monday, Silas arrived early to AP English, reviewing his latest essay draft when Dr. Whitmore entered with glossy brochures. "The annual Westridge Literary Award competition," Whitmore announced. "As tradition dictates, I'll be selecting 2 seniors to compete for a $5,000 scholarship and my personal recommendation to the university of their choice." The classroom crackled with energy. Whitmore's recommendation was the golden ticket. In 15 years, every student who'd received it had been accepted to their first-choice school. The competition requires a 5,000-word analytical essay exploring a significant literary work, its historical context, and contemporary relevance, Whitmore continued. The deadline is 30 days from today, with public readings before the selection committee on October 15th. Silas's pulse quickened. This could be his chance, a way around Whitmore's bias. "This year, I've selected Tyler Matthews as our first competitor." Whitmore smiled toward the back where Tyler sat with his usual self-satisfied expression. Tyler's analysis of Hemingway last semester showed exceptional promise. "And for our second competitor." Whitmore's eyes swept the room, landing on Silas. "Mr. Johnson." A murmur ran through the classroom. Silas froze, certain he'd misheard. "Mr. Johnson seems convinced he's Harvard material," Whitmore continued with a thin smile. "This competition should provide him the opportunity to prove it, or to recognize his limitations." Whitmore placed a brochure before Silas with theatrical precision. "Perhaps you'll surprise us all," he said, voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. "Though in my experience, ambitious boys who reach beyond their station often learn painful but necessary lessons about the natural order of things." The competitors will present before the entire English faculty, the principal, and this year, Whitmore paused for effect, a special guest from the Harvard admissions office who has agreed to attend as a personal favor to me. Silas's stomach dropped. Harvard admissions, manipulated by Whitmore into witnessing his expected failure. 30 days, gentlemen," Whitmore said. "May the best scholar win." After class, Tyler cornered Silas in the hallway, friends forming a semicircle around them. "You should withdraw now," Tyler said, voice friendly but eyes cold. "Save yourself the embarrassment. My father's been a Harvard donor for 20 years. Whitmore's been coaching me since last spring. You don't seriously think you have a chance?" Silas clutched his books tighter, grandfather's bookmark visible between pages. "Dr. Whitmore says it's important to understand your place in the world," Tyler continued. "Not everyone belongs at the top. That's just how life works." As they walked away laughing, Silas stood motionless, the weight of what he'd agreed to sinking in. 30 days to produce a competition-worthy essay that would impress Harvard admissions, with Whitmore as the primary judge. Whitmore, who had never given him higher than a C+ on any assignment. Was Silas walking into a carefully orchestrated failure, or was this his one chance to rewrite the ending Whitmore had planned for him? "He's setting you up to fail." Ms. Rivera leaned against her desk where Silas had sought refuge during lunch. "You realize that, right?" Silas nodded. "But if I back out, he wins automatically." "Franklin Whitmore has been running this competition for 15 years. He's never chosen an East Side student before. Why now?" "To make an example of me. To prove his point about knowing my place." Ms. Rivera pushed her glasses up. "You're probably right. But here's what he doesn't know." She tapped the brochure. "The competition rules state that while Whitmore nominates the competitors, the judging panel includes all 4 English department faculty, Principal Davis, and this year's guest judge. Meaning, Whitmore has only 1 vote of 6, and between us, Dr. Landon and Mrs. Kimura have been wanting to break his stranglehold on this competition for years." For the first time, Silas felt a flicker of hope. "If you can produce something extraordinary, something the other judges can't ignore..." Ms. Rivera left the thought unfinished. "I need to find the perfect topic," Silas said. "Something that plays to my strengths, not what Whitmore thinks literature should be." Ms. Rivera moved to her bookshelf, pulling down several volumes. Start here. Ralph Ellison, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, authors who wrote about visibility and invisibility, about systems designed to keep certain people in their place. Whitmore barely covers these writers in class. Exactly, Ms. Rivera said, which makes your analysis fresh. Also, check this out. She handed him a thick folder. Past winning essays. I've been collecting them. Whitmore keeps them locked up, only shares them with his favorites. Like Tyler. For the next week, Silas virtually lived in the library. He'd arrive at 7 a.m., devour the winning essays during lunch, and stay until Ms. Rivera kicked him out at 6 p.m., often continuing at the East Side Community Library until it closed at 8. His first draft focused on Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, drawing parallels between the unnamed narrator's experiences and contemporary issues of visibility in academic spaces. Monday morning, he printed his draft. As he collected the warm pages, a sense of accomplishment washed over him. That afternoon, Whitmore announced a workshop session where both competitors would share their progress. Tyler went first, distributing copies of his outline analyzing Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea as a metaphor for perseverance in American society. His presentation was polished, clearly rehearsed. Excellent framework, Whitmore nodded approvingly. Classic approach to a classic text. When Silas's turn came, he distributed his draft with nervousness coiling in his stomach. He outlined his analysis of invisibility as both a societal condition and a form of resistance in Ellison's work. As he spoke, he noticed something unexpected. His classmates were engaged. Nadia from debate team was nodding. Even Zach, Tyler's friend, seemed interested. An interesting choice, Whitmore said when Silas finished, tone suggesting the opposite. Though perhaps ambitious for someone still struggling with basic literary analysis, your thesis meanders, and your evidence is cherry-picked. Class, other feedback? To Silas's surprise, hands went up. I thought the connection to modern academic spaces was really strong, said Nadia. The part about invisibility being both a wound and a weapon was cool, added Marcus. For 15 minutes, the class engaged with Silas's ideas. Even with Whitmore steering toward criticism, students kept returning to what they found compelling. In the hallway afterward, 3 classmates stopped to tell Silas they were impressed. For the first time, they saw him. Really saw him. That afternoon, Silas opened his locker to find his books soaked, ink running from his notes. A water bottle had accidentally been placed open on the top shelf. Down the hall, Tyler and friends watched, snickering. Guess your work got all washed up, Tyler called. Silas salvaged what he could, including his grandfather's bookmark, which had thankfully been in his backpack. The next day, Silas discovered Whitmore had scheduled individual consultations. Tyler's was first, a full hour behind closed doors. When Silas's turn came, Whitmore barely looked up. 10 minutes, Mr. Johnson. I have a faculty meeting. I was hoping for feedback on my approach to Ellison. Ellison is an unconventional choice. Whitmore removed his glasses. The committee generally responds better to established classics of the Western canon. Ralph Ellison won the National Book Award. Invisible Man is taught at Harvard. Those seeking to make political statements rather than literary analyses often choose such works. It's not a political statement. I suggest you reconsider your selection if you're serious about this competition. Whitmore checked his watch. Our time is up. 7 minutes. He'd been given 7 minutes compared to Tyler's full hour. That evening, Silas discovered Whitmore had provided Tyler with annotated copies of past winning essays while denying Silas's request to see the same materials, claiming they were unavailable. The pattern was clear. For every step forward, Whitmore and Tyler created 2 obstacles. When Silas requested time in the media center, his request was lost. When he tried to reserve study rooms, they were mysteriously all booked by Tyler and friends who didn't show up. 23 days remained. Silas's workspace in the library had been declared reserved for debate team preparations for the next 2 weeks. As Silas relocated to the noisy cafeteria, he spotted Tyler entering Whitmore's classroom with research materials that Whitmore had claimed were checked out when Silas had requested them yesterday. The game was rigged. But Silas was just beginning to understand the rules. "What do you mean I need parental signatures in person?" Silas stood at the administrative counter, staring at the form Mrs. Phelps had handed him. "New policy for competition participants," she explained without looking up. "Since the literary award involves a substantial scholarship, we need parental acknowledgement of the terms. My parents both work double shifts. They can't just come in during school hours, Mrs." Phelps shrugged. "The forms must be signed in person by next Wednesday." Dr. Whitmore was quite specific. As Silas left, he spotted Tyler emerging from the counselor's suite, his father beside him in an expensive suit, clearly having just completed his signature process. "Johnson," Mr. Matthews nodded curtly. "Tyler tells me you're his competition this year. Ambitious." The way he said ambitious made it sound like delusional. That evening, Silas broke the news over dinner, their only shared meal, squeezed between his mother's day shift and his father's night shift. "I can try to switch with Loretta," his mother said, "but I already asked for time off next month for your college visit day." His father winced as he shifted, back clearly bothering him. "If you need me there, I'll be there. Might cost us some overtime hours." The unspoken reality hung in the air. Every hour his parents didn't work meant bills that might not get paid. The $157 electric bill on the counter was already overdue. "It's fine," Silas said. "I'll figure something out." Later that night, as he worked at the kitchen table, Silas found himself staring at the Harvard application website. The $75 application fee. The recommended campus visit his family couldn't afford. The legacy admissions advantage Tyler took for granted. For the first time, doubt crept in. Was he putting his family through strain for a dream the system was designed to keep out of reach? The next day, Mrs. Warner, the college counselor, called Silas into her office during study hall. "I wanted to discuss your college list," she said. "I see you're still focused on several Ivy League schools, but I'm concerned about setting realistic expectations." Silas stiffened. "My GPA is 4.2. My practice SAT scores are in the 98th percentile." "Those are excellent stats," she acknowledged. "But college admissions look at the whole picture. Extracurriculars, legacy status, ability to contribute to campus life. Have you considered Westridge Community College? Their transfer program to State University is excellent, and you'd qualify for full financial aid." It was the same message in different forms. You don't belong there. Aim lower. Know your place. That afternoon, Silas discovered his personal writing journal missing from his backpack. He always kept it with him. It contained early drafts, notes, and ideas for his competition essay. The next morning, excerpts appeared on the bulletin board outside the cafeteria. His most personal thoughts about Westridge, his fears about not measuring up, his raw anger at Whitmore's treatment, all posted anonymously for everyone to see. Students stared as he ripped the pages down, hands shaking with rage and humiliation. Down the hall, Tyler watched with a satisfied smirk. The message was clear. You don't just have to beat us academically, you have to survive us socially. That weekend, the Eastside Community Library announced emergency closures due to flooding from a burst pipe. The nearest public library was 3 bus transfers away. With 17 days left, Silas found himself working at his crowded kitchen table, surrounded by Jamal's homework, his mother's coupon clipping, and the constant background noise of their apartment complex. Monday morning, Ms. Rivera intercepted Silas before class. "Dr. Whitmore has scheduled a pre-submission review panel," she said in a low voice. "Thursday afternoon. Faculty only, supposedly to provide feedback, but really to critique my work in front of the other judges before the official submission." Silas finished. Ms. Rivera nodded grimly. "Tyler's already signed up for the first slot. You should prepare." "Mr. Johnson!" Principal Davis's voice boomed down the hallway. "Just the young man I wanted to see." Davis, a towering former basketball coach with a politician's smile, clapped a hand on Silas's shoulder. "I understand there's been confusion about the parental signature requirement." "My parents work during school hours," Silas explained. "They can't just—" "Say no more," Davis interrupted. "While we can't waive the requirement, I've authorized an alternative. Your parents can come Friday evening until 7 p.m. I'll personally stay late to accommodate their schedules. Relief washed over Silas. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Davis winked. Thank your advocate here. He nodded toward Ms. Rivera. Now, about this pre-submission panel. As principal, I think it's important I attend as well, don't you? Keep things balanced. As Davis strode away, Silas turned to Ms. Rivera. Did you? I may have mentioned that disparate treatment of competition participants might interest the district's equity compliance officer, she said with a small smile. For the first time in days, Silas felt a glimmer of hope, but it was short-lived. That afternoon, his mother called during study hall, her voice tight with stress. Boss says I can't switch shifts Friday. There's a mail audit, all hands required. Your father tried to get coverage too, but... It's okay, Mom, Silas said, heart sinking. I'll figure something out. Without those signatures, he'd be disqualified. All his work, all this struggle, wasted. Thursday's pre-submission panel went exactly as expected. Tyler presented first, receiving effusive praise from Whitmore. When Silas's turn came, Whitmore spent 20 minutes highlighting fundamental flaws in his approach, while Dr. Landon and Mrs. Kimura attempted to offer constructive feedback that Whitmore repeatedly interrupted. Principal Davis intervened several times to ensure balanced feedback, but the damage was done. Friday morning, a janitor handed Silas a note. His parents' car had broken down. The repair would cost $340 they didn't have. They'd called in favors and borrowed money just to get it towed. The signature deadline was that evening. His essay needed major revisions. The competition submission was due in 13 days. And now his family faced a financial crisis his Harvard dreams had indirectly caused. As he slumped into his seat in AP English, Silas wondered if everyone had been right. Maybe kids from Cedar Heights Towers weren't meant for Harvard. Maybe the system wasn't just rigged. Maybe it was unbeatable. Dr. Whitmore entered with a triumphant air. Exciting news, class. I've just confirmed that our special guest judge from Harvard Admissions is Mr. Lawrence Harrington, Senior Admissions Officer for the Northeast Region and a personal friend. His eyes found Silas. Mr. Harrington places particular emphasis on understanding one's appropriate academic trajectory. He believes students thrive when they select institutions that align with their background and preparation. The message couldn't have been clearer. Even the Harvard judge was predetermined to see Silas as an outsider. The quarterly issue of Westridge Literary Review hit distribution boxes Monday morning. The school's literary magazine was typically dominated by the same circle of names. Silas had submitted a short story weeks ago, before the competition began, but had forgotten about it in the chaos. Between first and second periods, an unusual buzz filled the hallways. Students huddled around copies, animated conversations breaking out. Zoe Chen, the magazine's editor, intercepted Silas on his way to calculus. "Have you seen it?" she asked, thrusting a copy into his hands. "Seen what?" "Page 17. The Invisible Scholar. It's brilliant. Everyone's talking about it." Silas froze. The Invisible Scholar was his submission, a thinly veiled fictional account of an East Side student navigating Westridge's elite academic world, written under his pen name, East Wind. "I didn't think it would get published," he admitted. "Are you kidding? The faculty advisor said it's the best piece we've published in years. The Westridge Herald wants to interview the author for their Local Voices section." The Herald? The local newspaper rarely covered student writing. "They're doing a feature on emerging literary voices. They called this morning." Zoe lowered her voice. "I know East Wind is your pen name. The Herald wants to interview you tomorrow. Are you in?" Before Silas could answer, Dr. Whitmore appeared, snatching copies from students' hands. "Who approved this issue? This content is inappropriate." Zoe stiffened. "Mrs. Kimura approved it, as always. She's the faculty advisor." Mrs. Kimura overstepped her authority. "This publication represents Westridge Academy, and certain perspectives are not. This issue needs to be recalled immediately." "On what grounds?" Principal Davis appeared. "I've just finished reading it. Exceptional work, Ms. Chen." Principal Davis, if I could speak with you privately, Whitmore began. About the standout piece everyone's discussing? The Invisible Scholar? Davis smiled. Powerful stuff. The kind of writing that wins competitions and impresses college admissions officers. As they continued their exchange, Zoe whispered, So? The Herald interview? In that moment, something shifted in Silas. For months, years really, he'd been trying to be invisible in the way Whitmore wanted. Quiet, compliant, accepting his place. But there was another kind of invisibility, the kind Ellison wrote about, where being unseen could become a form of power. Yes, he decided. I'll do the interview. The Herald article appeared Wednesday. Hidden literary talent emerges at Westridge Academy. The feature praised East Wind's authentic voice and unflinching examination of educational inequity. Though Silas had requested his real name be withheld, the article made it clear that East Wind was a student from Eastside attending Westridge on academic merit. By lunchtime, the atmosphere had changed. Students Silas barely knew stopped him to discuss the story. Teachers gave thoughtful nods. Even Tyler's friends seemed uncertain how to treat him. Ms. Rivera found him in the library that afternoon. You've caused quite a stir, she said. Whitmore's furious. He thinks Mrs. Kimura and Principal Davis orchestrated this to undermine him. I just wrote a story, Silas said. A story that's resonating because it's truth wrapped in fiction. She slid a business card across the table. Marcus Washington, Harvard 09. He read the Herald piece and reached out. He mentors Eastside students applying to Ivy League schools. Why would he help me? Because 12 years ago, he was you. Eastside kid, public high school, first in his family to go to college. Now he's an attorney in Boston who sits on Harvard's alumni admissions committee. She tapped the card. Call him. That evening, Silas spoke with Marcus Washington for over an hour. The Harvard alum offered to review Silas's application materials and confirmed what Silas had begun to suspect. Dr. Whitmore's special connection to admissions officer Lawrence Harrington might be overstated. Harrington evaluates thousands of applications yearly, Washington explained. If he's visiting Westridge, it's part of a standard school tour, not some personal favor. And no single teacher's recommendation determines Harvard admissions. We look at the whole picture. The conversation left Silas with renewed determination and a crucial realization. Whitmore's power existed largely because students believed in it. The next day, Silas began documenting Whitmore's pattern of behavior. He collected his graded papers alongside similar work from non-Eastside students that received higher marks. He noted resource disparities and listed every instance where Whitmore had discouraged Eastside students from applying to elite universities. What emerged was a clear pattern of systematic discouragement and unequal treatment, not overt enough to trigger action on any single incident, but undeniable when viewed collectively. Meanwhile, Silas's competition essay transformed. Instead of writing what he thought Whitmore wanted, he wrote with the authentic voice that had made The Invisible Scholar resonate. His analysis expanded to include connections between Ellison, Morrison, Baldwin, and even threads in Melville and Hawthorne that conventional analysis overlooked. With Marcus Washington's guidance, he restructured his approach to emphasize original insight rather than conformity. The essay became not just an analysis of literature, but a demonstration of how literature offered frameworks for understanding lived experience. Even the logistics improved. Principal Davis approved his parents' signatures via a home visit by Ms. Rivera. The Eastside Community Library reopened. Other teachers began offering assistance. Dr. Landon shared scholarly articles. Mrs. Kimura provided feedback. Even the school librarian set aside reference materials. With 1 week remaining, Silas worked with focused intensity. His essay took shape not as a plea for acceptance into Whitmore's world, but as a declaration that literature belonged to everyone, that Eastside experiences informed understanding of texts just as validly as Westridge's. The day before submissions were due, Silas stayed late in the media center. As he packed up, he noticed Tyler watching him from a nearby table, his usual smirk replaced by something closer to uncertainty. "You're still going through with this?" Tyler asked, tone lacking its usual edge. "Why wouldn't I?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Everyone's reading your story, even my parents. My mom asked me if that's really what happens here. Whitmore's been coaching me since junior year, Tyler admitted. He gave me all the past winning essays, spent hours on my outline, even told me what points would impress Harrington specifically. He hesitated. I didn't think it was unfair until I saw it written out in your story. And now? Now I don't know. Tyler stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, your story was really good. Better than anything I could write. The following morning, Silas submitted his completed essay. Invisible Ink, Ellison's Legacy and the Unseeing Eye in American Literature. 7,000 words that represented not just his analysis of literature, but his declaration that he belonged in the conversation, as Ms. Rivera accepted his submission. She handed him a note. Marcus Washington would be attending the final presentation as an observer. For the first time, Silas felt the playing field might actually be level. 3 days before the final presentation, Silas discovered his evidence file missing from his locker. The carefully compiled documentation of Whitmore's patterns had vanished. In its place lay a typed note. Some lessons are learned the hard way. The violation felt personal, beyond academic competition. Those testimonials had been shared in confidence by students who trusted Silas to protect their stories while exposing a pattern. The following day, the pre-presentation reception was rescheduled from 4:00 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. during Silas's calculus exam, which couldn't be rescheduled without penalty. By the time Silas arrived at 3:00 p.m., the reception was concluding. Tyler was surrounded by judges, laughing comfortably as Dr. Whitmore made introductions to Harvard admissions officer Lawrence Harrington, a silver-haired man with bow tie and blazer. "Ah, Mr. Johnson," Whitmore called out. "How unfortunate you missed most of our gathering. We were just discussing the remarkable family legacy Mr. Matthews represents. 4 generations at Harvard. Quite the tradition." Harrington smiled. "Legacy considerations are certainly part of our holistic process. Tradition matters at Harvard." The message was clear. The game had been rigged from the start. That evening, Silas received the schedule. Tyler would present first at 4:00 p.m., prime time when the auditorium would be full. Silas had been assigned 5:30 p.m., when most students would have left and parents would be heading home for dinner. His parents had been informed their presence was optional, while Tyler's family would be given front-row seats as community supporters of the academy. The morning of the presentation, Silas found the school buzzing with anticipation. Posters prominently featured Tyler's photograph, with Silas's name in smaller text. The program handouts summarized Tyler's achievements in detail, while Silas's bio consisted of 3 generic sentences. During AP English, Whitmore distributed both essays to the class, a last-minute addition Silas hadn't been informed of. "Today, we have the privilege of previewing the competition entries," Whitmore announced. "We'll start with Mr. Matthews's exemplary analysis of Hemingway." For 40 minutes, Whitmore guided the class through Tyler's essay, highlighting its sophisticated structure and nuanced understanding. The essay was good, better than Tyler's usual work, with clear signs of coaching. When they turned to Silas's essay, Whitmore's tone shifted. "Now we have Mr. Johnson's alternative approach. Note the non-traditional structure and somewhat emotional handling of the material." What followed was a systematic dismantling of Silas's work, with Whitmore questioning sources, challenging interpretations, and dismissing his most original insights as missing the established critical consensus. Between classes, Silas checked his phone to find a text from his mother. "So sorry, baby. Boss won't let either of us off for presentation. Mandatory overtime. We're so proud of you. Call after." The final piece of Whitmore's strategy. Silas would present to a thinning audience after a celebrated competitor with no family support, following a morning of public criticism, knowing that a primary judge was predisposed toward his opponent. By 3:30 p.m., Silas sat alone in an empty classroom, reviewing his notes with increasing despair. Through the open door, he could see board members arriving, administrators in formal attire, local media setting up cameras. Ms. Rivera appeared in the doorway. "Marcus Washington is here," she said, "and I'll be in the front row." "Thanks," Silas managed. But we both know how this ends. She sat beside him. Do we? Whitmore's been setting this up for weeks. My evidence is gone. Tyler's going first to a packed house. My parents can't come. The Harvard guy is practically wearing a Team Tyler shirt. Silas closed his notebook. Maybe this is what Whitmore wanted me to learn. That some doors stay closed, no matter how hard you push. Is that what your grandfather would say? Ms. Rivera asked quietly. Silas touched his pocket where the bookmark rested. No, but he didn't understand how the system works. He understood perfectly, she countered. That's why he gave you that bookmark. Not because he thought the system was fair, but because he knew reading, truly reading the world, was the first step to changing it. At 4:00 p.m., applause erupted as Tyler was introduced. Silas could hear Whitmore's amplified voice praising a young scholar who represents the finest traditions of Westridge Academy. At 4:45, thunderous applause indicated Tyler's conclusion. Silas pictured it. Standing ovation, Whitmore beaming, Harrington nodding, Tyler's parents bursting with pride. The narrative playing out exactly as scripted. Through the open door, Silas watched the audience thin. By 5:15, the auditorium had emptied by nearly half. Dr. Whitmore appeared. Mr. Johnson, you're up in 15 minutes. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Smaller audience than we hoped, but quality over quantity, yes? As Whitmore walked away, Silas heard him address someone. Lawrence, let me show you those admission statistics I mentioned. Fascinating correlation between socioeconomic background and academic persistence. Harrington's voice faded as they walked toward the administrative wing, clearly in no hurry to return for Silas's presentation. At 5:25, a student aide appeared. 5 minutes, Mr. Johnson. Silas gathered his notes and walked slowly toward the auditorium. Through the doors, he could see the scattered audience, perhaps 50 people where there had been 200 for Tyler. Ms. Rivera sat front and center beside Marcus Washington. No sign of Whitmore or Harrington yet. As he took his place backstage, Silas heard Principal Davis beginning his introduction, a generic, clearly less enthusiastic version of Tyler's introduction. The stage lights felt hot, the room impossibly large, his preparation inadequate. For a moment he considered simply walking out the back door. What was the point? The decision had been made before he ever wrote a word. Would his voice even matter in a system designed to silence it? And something shifted inside Silas. He set his notes on the podium, then deliberately moved away from it, stepping to the center of the stage instead. I was going to begin by thanking Dr. Whitmore for this opportunity, he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. But that would perpetuate the fiction that this competition was ever meant to be fair. A murmur ran through the audience. Principal Davis straightened in his seat. Instead, I want to talk about what I've learned about American literature during this process, not just from the texts themselves, but from experiencing firsthand the systems they describe. For the next 10 minutes, Silas spoke without notes, weaving together Ralph Ellison's insights on invisibility with his own experience navigating Westridge Academy. He drew connections between the unnamed narrator of Invisible Man and the voices systematically excluded from literary canon and academic institutions. Ellison wrote about being invisible not because people couldn't see him, but because they refused to see him, Silas explained. That invisibility is both a burden and, paradoxically, a kind of power, because what isn't seen can't be controlled. As he spoke, the auditorium doors opened. Dr. Whitmore and Lawrence Harrington slipped in, clearly surprised to find Silas already mid-presentation. Their late entrance drew attention, causing heads to turn. Harrington, looking somewhat embarrassed, quickly took a seat in the back row. Whitmore remained standing, arms crossed. Their arrival only fueled Silas's confidence. American literature is filled with voices that were meant to remain invisible. From Frederick Douglass writing his way to freedom, to Zora Neale Hurston documenting cultural realities white academia wasn't ready to acknowledge, to Ralph Ellison himself. He moved across the stage with growing authority, no longer the hesitant student but a scholar commanding his subject. What these writers understood, what they force us to confront, is that invisibility is not just a personal experience, but a structural reality, a system designed to determine whose stories matter, whose experiences count, whose dreams are valid. The audience was completely silent now, captivated. Even those who had been checking watches or scrolling through phones were fully engaged. My essay explores how Ellison's insights apply not just to racial invisibility, but to all forms of institutional gatekeeping, including educational systems that determine which students belong in elite spaces and which don't. From the back of the room, Whitmore's voice cut in. Mr. Johnson, this presentation was meant to analyze literature, not offer social commentary. Principal Davis stood. Dr. Whitmore, the presenter has the floor. Silas didn't miss a beat. Actually, Dr. Whitmore's interruption perfectly illustrates my thesis. Some voices are permitted to speak, others are expected to remain silent. A few surprised laughs rippled through the audience. Rivera's smile was barely contained. But as Ellison demonstrated, invisibility, once recognized, becomes a position of unique perspective. The invisible person sees what others don't, including the mechanisms designed to keep them unseen. Silas then pivoted to a brilliant, detailed analysis of Ellison's narrative techniques, connecting them to Morrison, Baldwin, and even threads in Melville and Hawthorne that conventional criticism had overlooked. He drew on scholarly sources, historical context, and close textual analysis with a precision that left the academic portion of the audience nodding in appreciation. He was no longer trying to impress Whitmore or match Tyler's approach. He was demonstrating a mastery that was uniquely his own, informed by his personal experience, but grounded in rigorous literary analysis. 20 minutes into his presentation, something unexpected happened. The auditorium doors opened again, and people began entering. Students who had left after Tyler's presentation, teachers from other departments, even a few parents. Word had spread through text messages and social media. Something remarkable was happening in the auditorium. By the time Silas reached his conclusion, the audience had nearly doubled in size. Even more surprising, Lawrence Harrington had moved from the back row to an empty seat near the front, his attention completely focused on Silas. Ellison wrote, "When I discover who I am, I'll be free," Silas said, drawing toward his conclusion. Literature at its most powerful doesn't just reveal characters to readers, it reveals readers to themselves. It makes visible what we've been trained not to see, including the boundaries we've accepted without question. He paused, scanning the now crowded auditorium. The true legacy of Ellison isn't just his masterpiece novel, but his insistence that American literature, and by extension, American institutions, must expand to include all voices, not just those deemed acceptable by traditional gatekeepers. As Silas finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. People rose to their feet. First Ms. Rivera and Marcus Washington, then others joining until most of the audience was standing. Even Principal Davis was on his feet, applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Only Whitmore remained seated, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. When the applause finally subsided, Principal Davis approached the podium. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for a truly thought-provoking presentation. Before we move to the judge's deliberation period, Mr. Harrington from Harvard Admissions has asked to say a few words." Harrington made his way to the stage, adjusting his bow tie. "I've attended dozens of these school competitions over the years," he began. "But I must say, this is the first time I've witnessed such a compelling demonstration of both literary analysis and intellectual courage." He turned to Silas. "Young man, the purpose of education, particularly at institutions like Harvard, isn't to confirm what we already know, but to challenge us to see differently. Your presentation exemplified that purpose." From the back of the auditorium, a deep voice called out, "That's my son!" Silas looked up in shock to see his father standing in the doorway, still in his hospital custodian uniform, his mother beside him with her postal service bag over her shoulder. They must have come directly from work, finding a way to be there despite everything. As the judges withdrew to deliberate, the audience buzzed with conversation. Silas made his way to his parents, who engulfed him in fierce hugs. "We heard you were incredible," his mother whispered. "Jamal's friend's mom was here and called us. We got someone to cover the last hour." "You spoke your truth," his father said, voice rough with emotion. That's all we ever wanted. Ms. Rivera approached with Marcus Washington, who shook Silas's hand firmly. That wasn't just good, it was Harvard good, Washington said. Whatever happens with this competition, we need to talk about your application. Before Silas could respond, a commotion erupted near the administrative offices. Principal Davis emerged, his face grave, accompanied by 2 school board members. They headed straight for Dr. Whitmore, who was standing near the judging room. Their conversation was tense, but hushed. Whitmore's face paled, then flushed with anger. He gestured dismissively, then froze as Davis handed him a folder that looked exactly like Silas's missing evidence file. 30 minutes later, the judges returned to the auditorium. Principal Davis took the podium, his expression carefully neutral. Before announcing the judge's decision, I must inform you of a significant development. Evidence has come to light suggesting a pattern of discriminatory practices affecting the fairness of this competition. As a result, Dr. Whitmore has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation and has recused himself from the judging panel. A shocked murmur swept through the crowd. Whitmore was nowhere to be seen. The remaining judges have reviewed both entries and reached a unanimous decision, Davis continued. The Westridge Literary Award, including the $5,000 scholarship and faculty recommendation, is awarded to Silas Johnson for his essay, Invisible Ink, Ellison's Legacy and the Unseeing Eye in American Literature. The auditorium exploded with applause and cheers. As Silas moved toward the stage in a daze, he passed Tyler, who unexpectedly extended his hand. You earned it, Tyler said simply. On stage, Principal Davis handed Silas an envelope containing the award certificate. As Silas opened it, something fell into his palm, his grandfather's bookmark, which had been missing since the day his locker was vandalized. The leather felt warm against his fingers, the embossed words clear under the stage lights. He brought it to his nose, inhaling the familiar scent of cedar and aged paper that had somehow grown stronger, as if the bookmark had absorbed the essence of his journey and was giving it back to him in this moment of triumph. Once you learn to read, you will be forever free. In that moment, surrounded by applause, his parents beaming from the front row, Silas understood what his grandfather had really meant. Freedom wasn't just about literacy, it was about learning to read the world, to see the systems designed to make you invisible, and to write yourself into visibility despite them. 8 months later, Silas stood in his family's living room, staring at the envelope on the coffee table. The crimson Harvard shield in the corner seemed to glow against the cream-colored paper. Open it already, Jamal urged, bouncing on the edge of the sofa. The suspense is killing me. His parents exchanged nervous smiles. His father's back brace was gone now. The surgery they'd finally been able to afford had worked. His mother had cut back to regular hours, using her evenings to take community college classes. Silas picked up the envelope, feeling its weight, literal and symbolic. Inside was not just an acceptance or rejection, but a verdict on whether institutions could actually change, whether invisibility could truly be overcome. He slid his finger under the flap and pulled out the letter. Dear Mr. Johnson, we are pleased to inform you. His mother's scream of joy cut off the rest. They crowded around him, reading over his shoulder, Full scholarship through the Robertson Foundation for Educational Equity. The next morning, Silas visited Westridge Academy one last time. The school had changed since the literary award competition. Following Whitmore's departure and the subsequent investigation, the board had implemented new equity policies. Ms. Rivera had been appointed head of the English department. The university board in the AP English classroom now displayed a more diverse range of colleges, with successful applicants from all neighborhoods. Harvard, huh? Principal Davis caught up with Silas in the hallway. Can't say I'm surprised after that presentation. You know, applications from East Side students are up 40% this year. Your classmates saw what's possible. In the library, Silas found Ms. Rivera shelving books. I have something for you, he said, handing her a small package. Inside was a leather bookmark, newly made but styled after his grandfather's, with a different quote embossed on its surface. When I discover who I am, I'll be free. For the next student who needs reminding, Silas explained. Ms. Rivera's eyes glistened. There's already a freshman asking about Harvard. Wants to know how you did it. Tell him it's not about getting past the gatekeepers, Silas said. It's about recognizing that the gates were never legitimate in the first place. As Silas left Westridge Academy for the last time, he passed Tyler Matthews in the parking lot. Their relationship had evolved into something like mutual respect since the competition. So, Harvard after all, Tyler nodded. My dad's still processing that one. Where did you decide on? Silas asked. Princeton, Tyler grinned. Thought I'd break the family tradition. Your essay got me thinking about following prescribed paths without questioning them. That evening, Silas sat at the desk in the bedroom he still shared with Jamal, writing the final entry in the journal he'd kept throughout his senior year. The journal would become the foundation for a mentoring program he was establishing for East Side students with college ambitions. Already, 15 middle schoolers had signed up for summer sessions. He ran his fingers over his grandfather's bookmark, now framed on his wall alongside his Harvard acceptance letter. The leather had darkened with age, but the embossed words remained clear. Once you learn to read, you will be forever free. Silas thought about the different kinds of reading he'd learned. Reading literature, reading institutions, reading the unspoken rules designed to keep some people in their place. His grandfather had understood that literacy was never just about decoding words on a page. It was about decoding the world itself, seeing through the narratives others constructed to limit your possibilities. The true power of reading, Silas now understood, wasn't just in consuming stories. It was in recognizing when you were being written into someone else's story, and finding the courage to pick up the pen and write your own. Looking at the faces of the East Side middle schoolers in the program brochure on his desk, Silas wondered, how many systems still exist that tell certain kids they don't belong in certain spaces? How many voices are still being silenced by those who claim to know their proper place? And more importantly, what would it take for all of us to start reading the world differently? To see the invisible structures that shape our expectations of others and ourselves? Perhaps it begins with a simple question. Whose voice are you listening to today, and whose voice are you silencing? Has someone ever told you that you didn't belong or couldn't achieve your dreams? What invisible barriers have you faced in your own education or career? Share your story in the comments below, and if Silas's journey resonated with you, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Beat Stories for more inspiring narratives of underdogs who refused to stay invisible. Because every like and subscription helps us amplify the voices that systems try to silence.
This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of what happens when truth meets visibility. At Beat Stories, we believe exposure is the first step to transformation. Subscribe and stay tuned, because the next story might be yours.